Okay, I'm here for another episode in my reflection series, and this one is going to be with GitzZz, who is a German Unreal Tournament champion. Quite an infamous, famous character, legendary character in his game, which obviously Unreal had its few years at the beginning where it was one of the bigger esports games. Sadly, hasn't survived with the Quakes and the Counter-Strikes of the day, as it were, to the modern day. But we're going to go back in time. We're going to jump in that time machine, and we're going to go way back. So actually, here's the first thing I want to ask you, GitzZz.
Yeah.
Is I noticed in the very few interviews you did back in the day, you were one of those guys who did always stress the angle that you're not a pro gamer. Like, you are kind of just a nerd, and you're a guy who likes Unreal Tournament, and you play it because, you know, if it's possible to play in a tournament or whatever. But you were never the guy who was like, this is a sport to me, and I'm going to be a pro player, and I'm going to attend every tournament possible. And you didn't go the fatality route, right? You did see it in some way as just the thing you could do on the side because you were good at the game, right?
Yeah, right. Actually, I saw the game really as a hobby, as I told in the past, because I couldn't imagine at that time, because esports wasn't at that time, was it what it is now. So I actually couldn't think about playing like full time and getting money, because it just wasn't in my mind. But it just wasn't possible. You just had one tournament in a year, like World Cyber Games or the Electronic Sports World Cup, and CPL. Then it was 2 in a year, where you could make best maybe like $20,000 to $30,000, and of course you have to be on the first place then. But this is not something like you can be sure to get.
Yes.
So it actually wasn't a choice for me, and I just said, okay, gaming is a hobby, and I need a normal job to have my safe financial basis. Or actually, back then I was even younger, so I had to do my apprenticeship. So the thing that I can even work, I had to do this first. So I couldn't actually think about being a pro gamer.
Okay, because I noticed that when you, in all these interviews you did, when people would ask you, it lines up with it. How much did you practice? Because, you know, if they see it, you're the champion, etc., right? Even though back then, sure, a lot of players didn't have the sponsorships, you know, and it was very, very few. Like, it was mainly like top Quake players, you know, who maybe had an actual salary. Sure, but there's still a lot of nerds that would play a lot just because they love the game, right? You always used to say you only played it a few hours a day.
Well, it depended, of course. Sometimes I played it a few hours a day. Sometimes, when, of course, there were LAN parties, or we had LAN trains with the clans, then of course it was almost the whole day or the whole weekend. But in average, if you see the whole week, and in average, it was maybe playing 3 hours, 4 hours a day.
Okay. So actually, before we jump into the 1v1 accomplishments and the big wins that people might remember, I wanted to ask you, you just touched on it there, when you would go to these LAN parties, and especially when you would go to the team tournaments. This is a part of Unreal Tournament history that sadly has been completely lost, because maybe people remember the WCGs, and maybe they remember you, or later on Burnie, or some of the other players, Lauke, it's Destrukt, all, you know, the really big names.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
actually, I happen to know from knowing some of the people who were in the Unreal Tournament scene back then, that really, like, the tournaments, because it wasn't a massive pro game, they were kind of like a one-off thing, and they had their own cool value. But the main kind of like day-to-day of Unreal Tournament was playing TDM, and it was playing in clan base, and it was playing online games. And I know in Germany especially, you actually had a pretty good LAN scene at the time, where you could go with the 3 or 4 mates, and there would be, like, you know, a lot of teams there. In fact, I think it was Vicious was saying in his interview, you know, there'd be a lot of teams at these tournaments, even though, you know, it wasn't actually a massive esport at the time. Yeah. Was that a big part of the attraction for you, playing with your team? Obviously, you were in quite an infamous one called Höck, right?
Yeah, I was in a clan called Höck, but I was also in SK Gaming, or later on I was in Mouse Sports. Okay. But sadly, I just forgot the question. What did you actually ask?
So what was kind of this TDM side more like what you did each day as opposed to the duel element?
No, actually, I played much more duel.
okay.
And especially, of course, DMDEC16. It was my favorite map. At least in the beginning of Unreal Tournament, I actually really only played this map. It was like playing a duel and then / map mutator vote DMDEC16 repeat, and then the next guy came in and vote DMDEC16 and repeat, and actually I played deck all day, so I was a pretty good dueler on deck, but on the other maps, DM Codex, DM Turbine, and the other maps, I was of course pretty bad in the beginning, but TDM actually of course I played it with my team and I enjoyed it, but actually I lived, or if you want to put it like that, I played the game primarily for the duel.
Oh, okay. Right, well, what was the appeal of Deck 16? What did you like about this map so much?
I can't even tell you for 100%. I just liked the sniper rifle back then very much.
Yes.
And DM Deck 16 was probably the most wide open map next to DM Liandry, but Liandry wasn't a standard 1-on-1 map.
Okay. So
maybe it was like that. I can't really tell you, because nowadays I really think that Deck 16, because of the huge scale of the map, isn't really a good map, because you really can't move properly around. There are only a few movement tricks you can really do, like the dodge to the belt or some lift jumps and stuff, but there are much less trick jumps possible for compared nowadays, for example, to DM Lea. Right now, at least when I play Unreal Tournament 4, I've played it until maybe 2 months ago. DM Lea is right now actually my favorite map, and it's a very close map like DM Codex back then. And actually, in the past, I couldn't stand close maps, but nowadays I like them.
So an interesting detail is people know that when you went to the World Cyber Games, you had this success, but the World Cyber Games had a very interesting format, because actually the year before they officially became the World Cyber Games, they had this exhibition tournament called the World Cyber Games Challenge.
Yeah.
And this was the one where it seemed from the outside like very much like what World Cyber Games became later. But I know, for example, it didn't have the whole structure, which was actually a key element of the World Cyber Games, where you have all the regional qualifiers and you just only get there by qualifying. As far as I know, I think they just invited the players that go into it. I know that was the way in Quake. And so, for example, I think they just had some experts who were like, invite Fatality and this guy. And so in Unreal Tournament, they had some very good players. They had Destrukt and they had Excess Pain and they had a few others, but you weren't known yet. You weren't someone that anyone would have picked to go to this tournament this time, right? So you weren't competing.
Well, I was competing because I didn't even know that there was a tournament.
Oh, okay.
Actually, the first World Cyber Games I got to know about, and if I remember correctly, I didn't even read it myself, but if I remember correctly, one of my clanmates told me that there's a tournament like the World Championships and stuff, and you should register. And World Championships, okay. So actually, I heard of the World Cyber Games Challenge at the point when the qualifying for the World Cyber Games 2001 came up.
Okay.
So I didn't even know.
Were you, though, from the community already familiar with who Destrukt was?
No.
Okay, that's interesting.
The communities were extremely separated. The US were completely separated from the European, at least from my point of view. There was, I think in the year 2000, there was a big LAN party which was organized. So the best US team was flown, or what's flown to Europe to play TDM versus the best team of Germany, and it was Model Teamwork.
Yes,
playing, but I don't even remember the clan name of the US team. But this was actually the first moment when I actually got some names to know of the US teams or the US players. The Unreal Tournament game and the competition in Germany really was mainly Germany, or if you put the clan-based matches in it too, then it was Europe, like France, Spain, and Italy, but this was basically it. None of the players I played against came from other countries, like I do not know anybody from Norway or Sweden, or I don't know. Okay.
Right, so as you're talking about here, you got to know about it when someone said, you know, there's a World Cyber Games qualifier, go and try and qualify for it. Because as far as I know, isn't there an interesting story about that? Like GitzZz, when he went to the World Cyber Games, he won the tournament, he was a dominant player, but you only came third in the WCG qualifier, right, for Germany. So people will wonder, what happened? Why weren't you the champion of just the German qualifier?
Yeah, and I can tell you exactly, well, not exactly, but there are some factors that I can tell you for sure that influenced the outcome of the tournaments. At the German qualifier, there, first of all, I was nervous as shit, and at this event, a few hours before my match versus Crush, player from Model Teamwork, my pocket was stolen, my pocket money thing. So I was really distracted from the game, because minutes before the game I was trying to find it, and I just couldn't find it. So I was nervous as shit. I was distracted because my money was gone and my passports and stuff, and the third part that I would say had a huge influence on the results of the qualifier compared to the results of the World Cyber Games was honestly, I played, if I remember correctly, the qualifier with Boomslang, with a Razer mouse back then, which was a ball mouse. Yeah. And people from nowadays can't remember how bad really ball mice were. They were so extremely bad. You couldn't. You could only move very slowly with the mouse to keep track. And even if you moved the mouse slowly, if you had dust on the table or on your mousepad, the tracking wasn't really good. So the mouse did like flicks. Yeah. And the aiming really was bad. And it was a miracle because I was placed third, and the prize for the third place was a extremely bad monitor from Samsung. It was a 15-zoll monitor with a refresh rate of 28 milliseconds. So this was really shit. But what I also got was the IntelliMouse Explorer 3.0.
One of the most famous opticals, yeah.
Right. And I instantly switched to this mouse, and I just played a few days, I think, and I instantly felt how good this mouse was and precise the tracking and the movement speed you could do with it. So I lowered the mouse sense, and I don't know. I don't remember exactly the time between the qualifiers and the World Cyber Games, but maybe it was like 2 months or 3 months. And during this time, I lowered my mouse sensitivity quite much. And due to the functioning of the new mouse, I was really able to play a good low sensitivity. At least at that times, it was pretty low. Nowadays there are guys that play with like 60 centimeters for a whole turn, but I think back then I had a sensitivity for like 30 or 35 centimeters for a whole turn, and that was extremely low back then because everyone was playing, I think, that with 10 centimeters or 15, and 15 was extremely low. But with this low sensitivity, I think I was pretty much able to have a skill boost of myself, like 300%. Okay. So this is at least my explanation how I can explain this. Yeah.
Well, actually, yes, I remember this detail that everyone said you used a very low sensitivity. And obviously another factor back then was part of the reason, funnily enough, why people used higher sensitivities. First of all, you know, the technology in mice wasn't as good, so people tended not to have tried even low sensitivity. And then also, it's not like today where every mouse pad is like huge, you know.
Yeah.
People would have those little ones like you used to have just for free with a PC, and, you know, there's not much space on that, right? I know, even though now it's actually quite famous, like in games like Counter-Strike, there are some players who use like low sensitivities like that, you know, they're pros, so they get used to it, and they maybe for their style it works better. Did it take a lot of practice to have that sort of sensitivity though? Because I know it means you have to move your arm a lot when you play, right?
Well, I had, of course, to move my arm a lot, but as you just mentioned, the mouse pads weren't too big, so actually the movement of my arm nowadays with the big mouse pads are much bigger than the movement I had back then. And if I remember correctly, I was playing on a red pad back then at World Cyber Games, and I think I even got a red pad here, but I don't want to stand up now. I think I even have that red pad from the past, and the size is roughly like that. And if I remember correctly, I couldn't even do a whole turn when I put my mouse at the extremely right from the mouse pad, and I moved it to the extremely right, so as far as I could. I had like a third of a turn, so I couldn't. So as long as the opponent was in front of me, I was like killing everything. But if the opponent surprised me and was behind me, I was like that because I couldn't really turn, and my rocket launcher and my flak gun were so bad, but my sniper shock rifle and my pulse gun were pretty good. So these were the weapons I needed.
Okay, well, in that case, I think since we've told them already you won some of these tournaments, does that mean that the logical conclusion then is, I mean, obviously, at least in duel, it's 1v1, you know. I mean, TDM, it must have been a fucking nightmare if people were behind you, like you're saying. But at least in duel, right, you're placing one person. Does that mean you had very, very good sense for where people were, and you could kind of like in your mind know, so you never did get kind of surprised too much?
I think most one-on-one players, duel players can tell the two. Actually, if you are pretty good in duel and you have played like countless maps, actually you almost know to every point where your opponent is, or at least the area where he is, if not really exactly. So the occasion that the opponent occurs behind you is pretty seldom.
Okay. So when you went to this World Cyber Games, I read a story that was quite interesting. So in your team, you had a guy called Flacutus, who was not actually more famous than you, because famously he'd written this thing called the Unreal Tournament Bible, which kind of like explained some aspects of dueling and Unreal Tournament. And you played a game against him at this tournament that has kind of a crazy story to it, right? So do you remember the details that I'm alluding to here? What happened in this game?
Yeah, well, I gotta say that Flacutus was an extremely good player. He was extremely good at timing. He was constantly timing 3 items, which, to be honest, I couldn't. Timing distracted me extremely from the game, but I had to do it to be really good. Yeah. But timing always distracted me from other things like putting traps for the opponent and stuff. But Flacutus was a really good enemy. He was extremely good in timing. He had a pretty good aim. He had an extreme good pulse gun aim. And actually, I think we played DM Agony, and he was winning. He was winning. The score was like, I don't remember exactly, maybe 9-0 for him. And the only turnaround of the match I did was picking up the goo gun, loading up the goo gun, and fragging him. And Flacutus
for context, for people who don't know, this was not a main gun that was used, right? No, it was only basically used in an emergency when you didn't have a gun, and it was kind of like a bit fluky, right? Because it was a little bit of a projectile.
Actually, you didn't even use the gun in an emergency because it was, to be honest, completely useless. It did a ton of damage if you load it up and you shoot the slow goo gun, but the blob flew so slowly that you could like drink tea and then put it back and then move. So, but I think I surprised him at around a corner or something. So the time he had to dodge the blob was quite low, and I fragged him with it. And all the time before this frag, I just couldn't do it. Before he was timing so well, he was aiming so well, and I just couldn't kill him, and then I killed him with a bio blob, and this was the turnaround for the map because I got the armor then, and then I just switched it. So I took the pulse gun or the minigun, which did extremely much damage back then before they were tweaked down from the damage, like 2 years later or something. So all you had to do to remain map control was basically having the armor advantage and using pulse or minigun, and be sure to not get tricked in a trap.
Okay.
And this worked out.
Was when you were at this World Cyber Games, as you've described before, it's actually quite a cool story, the initial one about the WCG qualifier, and then you get a mouse, and then you didn't even know about the tournament before. You know, it actually sounds like the opening scenes of like a movie, you know, like the young kids like finding out about it and all stuff. But when you're at the tournament, and now you have this crazy match like this, like, what were your own expectations for yourself at the tournament? Did you think you were going to be the person who was going to win the tournament, and that you could beat all these people before you? Because as you're saying, interestingly enough, I didn't know this, you didn't really necessarily know, for example, any of the American players necessarily. Yeah. So it's not like now, you know, where an esports player goes in and he's scouted all his opponents and he knows roughly how everyone plays and stuff. Mm-hmm. What were your own expectations for yourself?
Of course, I couldn't expect to get to the first place, but I was pretty sure to place pretty good because it was known that the German Unreal Tournament scene was actually the best. So or at least the most of the best players came from Germany, and at least I've heard that the States got some good players, but they weren't so many. So I at least wished that I placed pretty good. But of course, I couldn't imagine placing first, you know.
Okay. So along the way to the final, you got to play against a Korean player called Zan. Now, here's what's funny, actually, is that until very recently, because Koreans were most famous for StarCraft, League of Legends, you know, games like this, it was actually a weird thing that Westerners used to say, is that they'd used to say, oh, Koreans can't play FPS games, just because generally they're not that popular in Korea. I mean, actually, that's just a detail Westerners don't know. Like, they had their own version of Counter-Strike. You know, they did have all kinds of games, and I know that mainly it's more like whether Korea as a country kind of gets into a game, you know, because they actually tend to just like a couple of games get very popular, and then those are the ones that everyone becomes a pro gamer in, right? So in games like Quake and Unreal, where every now and then you would get like one Korean player, I was always very interested because I noticed that clearly, yes, their country wasn't super into these games, but they would always have like one or two players that still somehow were pretty good. So if you didn't know about the US players, there's no way you could have known this guy before you played him, right?
I also didn't know this guy, but if I remember correctly, I didn't play Xan. But
you didn't? Oh, okay.
No, at least as far as I remember, but I played, his name was GitzZz Sin.
Oh, the other Korean player. Sorry,
yeah,
my apologies.
right.
Yes, okay.
Yeah. So I didn't know any of these two players. Actually, I only knew the European players that went to the World Cyber Games, but I don't know what the question was, what you were asking.
Okay, so the question is like, for example, were you shocked that there were Korean players who were in any way good at the game? Were they good at the game? Did they kind of understand how to play like the European meta or whatever?
The meta was totally different because in Europe you actually played with shield belt on, and the map pool that was played at World Cyber Games was also not a standard map pool. There were maps played like DM Malevolence was it called, or DM Curse, And these actually are not 1-on-1 maps that were ever played, at least as far as I know, that were played in Europe or Germany at least. And even the belt was set off. And the map I played GitzZz on was DM Curse. And there are only 2 armors. And one first was the belt, which was set off. And the second one were the thigh pads that only give you 50 armor. So on this map, there was nothing to time, nothing to being strategic about, because there was nothing to go. The thing was, you get the sniper and the pulse rifle or the minigun, and then you can take the thigh pads, or you wait at the thigh pads for the enemy to take it and then surprise them. And so the strategy on this map was actually there was none, because there was no need to move around or something. So it was just I don't know, when I was killed or something, I was just looking, okay, where's the best next weapon where you can do something with, and then like go slowly to the thigh pads and looking around, and where might he be, because he should be somewhere around the thigh pads, because there wasn't anything else to do. So the map pool and the rules of the whole tournament weren't the best to really show some real skill, at least at some maps.
Okay. Right. When you got to the final and you played against XS Payne, who was actually a known player, as I mentioned, he'd already been to the WCG Challenge tournament the year before, and I know that along with destrukt, he was considered one of the best American players. Did you actually know him at all when you met him in this final? Was he one of the players that you'd heard about before?
No. As I mentioned, until I went to the World Cyber Games, I actually didn't know the US scene at all. If you take out this one team that came in the year 2000 to this Judgment Day thing, or what was it called? I don't know. I didn't know anybody of them. I didn't know GitzZz Payne. I didn't know there was a guy called Phosgene or something, and 2 or 3 other guys, I think, but I didn't know anybody of them. Not to take anything away from their skill or anything, but I just didn't know them as little as I knew the players from South Africa or from South America. I really only knew the European guys. Okay,
well then when you played in this final, since you didn't know any of these players, the ones that we were referring to, how did XS Payne contrast against good players that you did know? Players in Germany, some of the European players. Was he at a similar level?
Well, it's hard to say, to tell if he was at a similar level, because I only played one map versus him, because it was single elimination as far as I remember. So I only played one map versus him, and I only played one map versus all the other few guys I had to play at the World Cyber Games, because if I remember correctly, it was single elimination, and you don't really have to play many opponents until you are in the final.
Yes.
So I played, I don't know, 4 guys in the group stages, and maybe 3 to 4 more, and then I was at the final. And I also played only one map versus one of these guys. So actually, I can't really tell. What I can tell about him back then is if he was mainly a high sensitivity player, which was pretty good at flag, because he flagged me 2 to 3 times, which I was a little bit amazed, because those you don't get fragged like this every day. So what I can tell is back then he had a pretty good flag, but I can't really tell much about the rest, because well, I can't remember him sniping me pretty good or anything else. I actually can just tell that his flag was quite good, but I don't know. And actually, I also don't know very little of the skill of the other players, because, as I said, versus GitzZz, for example, all I know is that he isn't bad at playing a shaft gun, pulse gun, and minigun, because that was mainly what you did at DM Curse.
Okay.
And I don't know if he's good at timing. I don't know if he's good at moving, because the map was good to move around. So you at this map pool that was played at World Cyber Games and the rules, it was really very little chance for me to find out with playing only one map to get a picture of the skill of the opponents.
Okay. So when you won this tournament, now one of the things I thought was cool about the World Cyber Games is they did go with that kind of like Olympics vibe. So it's not like you just won and like, here's some money and here's a nice big check. You get a gold medal and you get to stand in the ceremony and they play the German national anthem or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Is it a fun, vivid memory? Can you still remember what it was like to win the gold medal?
Yeah, it's like the golden time of my youth. Yeah, it's really unforgettable, and yeah, of course, winning the World Cyber Games, the first World Cyber Games, was great, and I will remember it forever. And of course, yeah. And of course, I will remember the win of the second World Cyber Games too.
Absolutely, yes. We'll get to that. Spoilers. Okay, yeah, I think people are aware you won both. Okay,
I'm sorry.
So, did you, after winning this tournament? Now, I have to say, you sound so far, by the way, like a very stereotypical German guy. Like you're just breaking things down very rationally, you know. Like what these answers you gave before, you could have easily just said like, well, I only played them on one map each, you know, but it was, you know, I won, so whatever, I was better, you know. You were like, no, but I can't really know how good they could have been. So that when you won this tournament, did you at least think to yourself, I'm probably the best Unreal tournament player in the world?
Well, of course, I was much younger at age, and if you go to the World Cyber Games, that is the Olympics, and actually the only tournament that you could go to back then, where the most players of all around the world took part in, and you win this tournament, of course you feel like I'm the best. But this is just how to put that correctly. Well, maybe you can put it like that. In this tournament and all the circumstances that have influence of the outcome of the tournament, I had the most luck. I had the best daily
form.
Yeah, right.
Level.
Yeah, right. And so all these factors come together, and it was me that came out first. So actually, this game we had already, I actually should have been knocked out at the game versus my friend Floccutus. Yes. Fragging someone with biogun is so rare that you actually can't do it. But I did it with skill or luck or kids luck or call it whatever. Okay. But the match was mine. So yeah, under these circumstances and all that did happen just happened, and I came out first. But if you put the tournament maybe 1 week later and me having a headache or a bad night, GitzZz Pain could have won, you know.
Okay. But, okay, well then you referenced it there, right? That was obviously like well, we didn't call them memes back then, but it was sort of the equivalent of a meme where people would call it GitzZz luck when you had a crazy moment, right? Yeah. So you're saying here, obviously this moment, like that's objectively pretty lucky to get a goo gun kill against someone who's a good player who's ahead in this match. But are you someone who believes in the concept that like, well, there's a famous saying, right, that like champions make their own luck, you know? The idea is that very good players somehow, it's almost like they attract luck, you know. They just get in these weird situations. It just goes the right way for them. Are you a lucky guy in that sense?
It's really hard to say because I think there are different types of luck, or the real luck and other actions that seem to be lucky. Yes. But of course, I sometimes really had luck. For example, in the match versus Lauke on DM Turbine, I was extremely lucky. But there are also other situations that seemed to be lucky, but actually weren't, because just for example, enemy having armor advantage like 150 and me only 108 HP and 50 armor, and me going in with a pulse gun and going out winning. But this wasn't luck, but just being extremely good at aiming, for example, or
yes.
I don't know, or but this seemed to be lucky. So I had armor advantage, or the opponent had, and then he said like lucky gets luck, or he ate some random shock combo, which seemed to him being random, but actually it was a prediction shot because I saw him at the one end of the map. And if you play maps extremely often, you know exactly how much time the opponent needs before he comes out at this corner, sure. Or this corner. So for him, it looked like spam, but actually it was extremely long time prediction, like seeing him and then 10 seconds later putting the combo to this place, and he didn't even see this. So it was, hey, spam and luck and shit, but no, it wasn't. But I have to admit, it's a mixture of real luck and things that seem to be lucky, but actually is a skill. So luck is a skill sometimes.
Yes, absolutely. A very famous saying, obviously.
Yeah.
Right. So then, let me ask a follow-up question along those lines, then, because that ties into another thing that I've noticed with players who, especially in duel games, are like great champions, etc., is whether they are lucky or not, whether that's the case, and whether we could break down, as you just did here, like, you know, where maybe actually they just saw you earlier or they predicted something, you know, and it's not quite luck, like it's not just random, you know, they didn't just fall over and kill you, right? When something like this happens, I've noticed another principle, though, is like the great champions, the other players think they're lucky, as you were referencing here. And so I actually also wonder if it's like a psychological thing for the other players. Like the great champion almost has kind of, you'd call it like an aura in English, you know, like when they play, for some reason, the other guy has it in his mind, like, oh, it's going to be so hard to beat him. He's going to get lucky. Do you think this phenomenon exists?
Well, I do think, of course, if you play someone that is that has a big name, and you have to play him, of course, there is the psychological effect of, you know, like being feared or
afraid, yes.
Or at least being extremely nervous playing him.
Sure.
But I couldn't say if I understood your questions or your sentence correctly. I don't think that you get the idea of him being more lucky or anything, because otherwise he wouldn't have this big name and he wouldn't be so good. But sometimes situations occur to be lucky, but I wouldn't say that if a bad player plays a pro player or a much better player, that he gets the idea of him being extremely lucky. At least if you play on a free-for-all DM server, sure. And like you go there and maybe some real noobs that are new to the game and don't know the scene, and you go there and just headshot everybody and aimbotting and stuff. But this is normal life for a good player. I think every other good players all around the different games like Quake or Counter-Strike. Well, Counter-Strike there's no DM, but Quake probably know that when they join a server and do a little bit crazy stuff, they get flamed after 2 minutes for cheating and yeah.
So when you won this World Cyber Games, and at the time people knew like, right, there's going to be another World Cyber Games next year, and then it's probably going to be a similar setting. And in fact, at this point in time, they used to have this quite cool feature where they would actually invite whoever had won to the next World Cyber Games. You know, in theory, you didn't have to go and qualify again, so you know you're going to be going there. Having won, did that actually spur you to practice more the next year? Did you kind of go in with like a mentality of like, right, I know I'm going to play this tournament, I'm going to practice more for it? Was it just the same when you got back home? You just played as much as you felt like?
I can't really say if I practiced more, because I already practiced pretty much, as I said, on the average of 3 to 4 hours. But it was what I felt was it already was pretty much, because I'm not like fatality playing 12 hours straight.
Yes.
And then sleeping 8 hours and doing 2 hours sports and then practice. It wasn't like that, except the weekends, for example. But during that time, I was in school, so I couldn't even play 12 hours a day. But what, of course, happened is when you win such a big title that you know you are in the spotlight and you got this title, and of course you want to keep this title. Yes. And there were some other LAN parties in Germany that I had or I wanted to attend, so I had to practice for these events too. There was the Dark Breed LAN in Germany, I think, yeah, which is a pretty big LAN. Then there was the PC Challenge in the Czech Republic, which was a prize money of $1,000, which was, of course, not as much as in the World Cyber Games, but it was at least an event to go where you get money. And there were 2-3 other LANs in Germany where I attended, so I actually didn't practice in special for the World Cyber Games 2002, but I kept practicing for these LANs and for the World Cyber Games, but not only for the World Cyber Games. I just kept on playing and I kept on practicing.
Okay. When the World Cyber Games 2002 came along, funny, you mentioned in the first one that it was single elimination, but in the second one, they did a double elimination bracket, actually. And this ended up being quite key for you because you actually did lose a game. You lost to this player from, was it Australia or New Zealand he was from, Evenflow?
New Zealand.
Okay. Yeah. So I remember one of the interesting things was he'd been to the World Cyber Games the year before, but he hadn't made a deep run in it. And at the time, you know, we all used to be on that website, Access Reality, ES Reality. We all used to go on that one. And he'd done interviews and he used to post there. And, you know, he was clearly someone who was like super passionate about Unreal Tournament, but understandably, New Zealand's not a very big country in terms of like population, and obviously there wasn't a huge scene in esports back then. And so I know he's one of the people who kind of did live to like hope he went to the World Cyber Games and had a chance to do something there because it's his only chance to kind of be in the spotlight. So when you played against him, do you think he had a good sense of like how to beat you, how you were going to play? What happened in this match where he beat you first?
Well, it's really hard to say because, as I mentioned before, I only knew the European scene and I also didn't watch replays of American players or even flow from New Zealand. So as I mentioned before, I only had these few games to judge the player, to judge the player's skill. And what I can say is that he had a pretty good shaft and a good shock combo and a good prediction. And every time I wanted to frag him, at least this is as I remember it, I ate a shock combo around the corner. And then I was low on health and I had to go back and get almost again. And so he was actually a pretty good opponent to play against. And the feeling that I got from him, at least from some players I knew, that they know me and I won the first World Cyber Games and stuff, but I had the feeling that Evenflow wasn't afraid playing me. On the other side, I at least got the feeling that some players, even some players I talked to, like how they talked to me and stuff, I had the idea that there was big respect. So and I didn't have that feeling from Evenflow. Not that he was mean to me or something, but when we were talking to each other, but somehow he played the game or we talked to each other. I didn't have the idea that he was kind of afraid playing me or telling, "Oh God, it's GitzZz" or something. I don't know. Okay. Nothing of that. Maybe it was his confidence that took him or that made him so good in this match.
Well, if you didn't know him then and you hadn't watched replays, it must have been quite surprising, quite shocking to lose so early in the tournament.
Well, of course, but the whole World Cyber Games was like a big black box for me because except the European players, I didn't know anybody, and there are so many factors that come to light when you play players in a duel, even if you play the same players, because there are. As I mentioned before, if you have a headache, if you had a bad night, if you were afraid, there are so many factors that influence the game and your performance that actually I can't even tell if I win versus that opponent this day, because if he performs extremely good at this day and had a excellent night and I didn't, he had like much better chances to win the game. And so the World Cyber Games in a whole was a big black box for me, because I didn't even know most of the players. Yeah. And of course, I didn't talk to them before the match, like half an hour, and how are you feeling? Have you had a headache? Oh, no headache. Yeah. Oh, it's a pity you had no headache. And so actually every match was like a completely new experience. It was unknown players for me. I didn't know how good they played on average. And yeah, so it really was. Of course, it was like you said, it was well, kind of depressing when you get knocked out, but it just happened, you know. You can't. I played my best with the strategy and the other things I had to take care about, and he came out winning.
Okay. Well, when you said there that you never watched any of the replays, etc., right, I could understand that the first year when you said that you didn't even know there was a World Cyber Games and a massive World Championship, you know. Okay, understandable, you're just the Unreal player then. But when you're the champion and then you come the next year, some of these players, you know, did used to post replays online for the fans to watch, you know, on, for example, on this website we're talking about. Why did you never do any scouting at all? Wouldn't it have helped someone like you, who's kind of a cerebral player? Wouldn't it have helped to have done a little bit of, you know, just watch one or two to have a sense of how the guy plays or what his style is?
Well, at least I think after the first World Cyber Games, when there were a few sites like ESWC or Cash.net, on these sites there were uploaded, but I think really just a few replays, and I think I watched a few from XS Pain, I think, and one or two other players, but I can't really tell that I watched really many replays. Maybe if it's much like 10 replays of the US and 5 replays of the rest of the world. I was okay. It was just, I don't know, I was so busy playing other tournaments in Germany and having to face the other awesome German players that I rather watched these players play the games of these players than taking care about others. I was just focusing on my surrounding, like the local LAN parties, and then focusing of myself improving, but not so much on taking care of these different strategies of other players. And I also wouldn't say that I really played different players differently. I might have adapted during the game, but I, for example, when I played Lauke on DM Turbine, yeah. He's actually known, at least as far as I know, that he had a pretty good flag. But I didn't play the map differently because I knew he had a good flag. It was just like I played my best and I adapted as good as I could during the game. But playing a duel is like dancing with somebody. As the stronger you are, the more armor you have, the more aggressive you can be. And if you are the underdog, you have to run away. But it was not like I knew Lauke was an extremely good flag player, and I would like not go to the flag because he was awaiting me there, taking it or something. I was just playing the game from the experience I had from playing every other players I played on this map, and the result of this experience I was just playing. But I didn't play a special strategy versus Lauke and a special strategy versus XS Pain or something. I just played my game and adjusted it maybe a little bit during the gameplay if I found out that this doesn't work out a little bit. Yeah, but it's not like I had the decision before the game playing someone, okay, he's a good flag player, I play like this. Actually, I played always, at least this is what I feel, always the same and maybe adjusted during the game.
Okay. So, because as I said, it was double elimination and you kept going through the tournament, you got to have a rematch with Evenflow. You got to beat him. You got to go on. I mean, this is obvious because we've said you won the tournament. When you played him again, did you do something different? Did the game go differently than the first time?
I would say no, but I can't really remember. There was, if this was the match versus Evenflow that was shown on the big stage, because not every match was shown on a big stage. Okay. But I think the game versus Evenflow was the second one, next to the game versus Shaggy. Yes. In the final that was shown on the big stage, and we were set as players in those like cabins.
Booths,
and these,
yes.
Yeah, and these were, or these should have been non-sound, so the
soundproof. Yes.
Yeah, but they completely weren't. So
you could hear the commentators or the crowd or something,
and you could hear the game that was played. So,
from the game sounds from the stage, right?
Right. And I remember this was for like 90% the game was Shaggy, because I think I lost. Did I lose? Was it Shaggy, or I don't know if it really was the game was Evenflow or Shaggy, but one of these two games was just really easy. I remember it was on DM Leandri, this game, but I really don't know if it was Shaggy or Evenflow, and I could hear every sound he was doing. I didn't know when he walked through the teleporter on the map. I heard when he picked up this gun, because picking up the different guns did a different sound. So actually I knew all the time just by hearing where he was. And well, if you play at a World Cup games and having a big trophy in front of you, you want to have, and a big shack, sure. you just can't sit there and ignore this. So
yes, obviously.
I was, of course, using this information I got from the big show, and this is like actually like a little bit of cheating. But
sure. It was, as you say, if the sound's coming in your ears, you can't ignore it and not go there, right?
It was not my fault.
Yes. Okay, so as you mentioned, in the final, you won the second World Cyber Games by playing against Shaggy, who's actually from my native country, the United Kingdom. Now, from what I remember, he was someone who wasn't expected to be in the final. I mean, for example, in the semi-final, or in the match before this, rather, he'd played against Lauke, the Dutch player, and Lauke was considered one of the best players, you know, and I think even there was circumstances in the game that they'd played where Shaggy had got like some really lucky kill or something along those lines, and so most people thought like, wow, it's actually amazing he even made the final. In the final, was it an easy match?
Well, as I just said, I don't know if the match was versus Shaggy, and I even don't remember the score we had.
Okay.
But either it was the match was Shaggy or the match versus Evenflow, I won and had no trouble because I had all the sounds. But I remember Shaggy being a real combo whore. So he really abused the shock rifle. He was extremely good with it. And in my opinion, this was the one of the main reasons he plays so well in this tournament.
Okay. So, if as you said before, winning both of them obviously were great moments in your career and very memorable ones. Does winning a second time, does it actually change anything? Does it make you think like, you know, the first one I wasn't just lucky in the first one, or, you know, now I know I'm the best player? Does it change your mentality at all?
Well, it strengthens your faith in yourself, of course, and it was also because the World Cyber Games 2002 was the last big event for Unreal Tournament 99, yes, for this edition of this game. And of course, I was extremely happy. And if you get 2 world titles in the series of the game, then of course I was like extremely satisfied because I could then really tell in this series of the game I won the most important tournaments. So if there comes a question of who was the best, at least in this series, it was, yes, just logical to tell my name, at least in the well, to be honest, even in the world, but I don't know how many events were in the United States, but maybe XS Paint won like 20 LAN parties there, I don't know, but if you consider the whole world,
yes.
At least in this edition, I think I had the most success, yeah.
Okay. So as I referenced before, when they had the World Cyber Games Challenge before these ones that you won, that was the one where you weren't there, obviously, you didn't even know about that side of esports, but it was won by Destrukt, who the American player who at the time was quite famous. And then what happened was when the World Cyber Games came along in 2001, he'd actually, because he was one of those guys like Fatality who considered himself a pro gamer and, you know, he was going to switch games to whatever was popular, he was actually playing Counter-Strike the next year and he was trying to be a pro in Counter-Strike. But for 2002, I know he did actually try to qualify for Unreal Tournament to go to the World Cyber Games, and he just didn't get out of the American qualifier. He didn't go to the big finals, and so we never got this matchup of the champions, of the old champion meeting against you at some point. And as you're saying, you know, there wasn't much connection aside from World Cyber Games between America, between Germany. Did it disappoint you? You never got to play against him in an official match. Did you care? I didn't care too much, but I also don't know. I don't have too much information about the World Cyber Games Challenge because, as you mentioned, the players were chosen, and I don't even know how many players were chosen, because as far as I know, the World Cyber Games Challenge were like a prequel and yes.
were pretty small. So, but I didn't really look it up. But I thought there were like, I don't know, like 8 or 16 players invited.
Could have been something like that, yes.
Yeah, well, you, not to take anything off his win, but it's in my opinion, it's a different story. If you have qualifiers and really like having the best of each country, like yes. Found out through qualifiers, or just selecting a few from a few different countries, and even the best, many of the best players from this game were from Central Europe, like Germany, France, some from Italy, and if these there were no players represented of these countries. I don't know if there was someone from France or Italy, but if these countries weren't represented at the World Cyber Games Challenge, you can't honestly call it a world title. It's like if you have a Formula 1 race and Michael Schumacher is not here right now, but when he was still racing, it's like having a world championship without Michael Schumacher.
Yes,
it's not worth so much, but of course he achieved this title, but I was, as I said, busy with myself, improving, playing the local lands, but I didn't feel bad about not playing him, or I don't feel that I lack this.
Okay. So as you mentioned, this World Cyber Games was the last in the original version of Unreal Tournament. But we had the sequel came out, Unreal Tournament 2003. I mean, it just shows how game developers are, that Unreal Tournament 2003 came out in 2002, but we'll just ignore that detail for a second. And the reason why this is interesting is, first of all, like a lot of these hardcore FPS games, where especially in these early days, most people who like the game, they're not casual fans, you know, they're people who are really into the game and they really love this one game. And I notice most sequels tend to disappoint. Like, you know, they do try to make it a bit more for the casual fan. They do try to get more people to want to play it. And I know that when this game came out, a lot of the Unreal Tournament 99 players were like, this is all right, I guess, but there's a lot of problems with it, and it's not as good a game. And for example, the shock combo, they made it a lot slower, so now anyone in theory could hit it, you know, in contrast to before, where it maybe had a bit more skill to it. Was it a worse game?
It's extremely hard to tell if the game was worse. Of course, it was a bit different. And if you like a game very much, actually every other game that comes after this game you like very much, there is a very little chance that the following game you like the same, or even you like more.
Yes.
So What I can say is the game was different. If you don't get too deep into the mechanics of the game, of course it was still an Unreal Tournament, like you had dodging, but the dodging was a little bit modified. You had a dodge jump, and the rate of fire of guns was altered, or the damage of guns was altered. So there were some changes and some major changes, and one of the major changes, of course, were including the shield gun that had influence on team deathmatch, but had extreme influence on playing duel. And from the beginning, I didn't really enjoy playing duel with the shield gun as much as I did without it, because it made the game, in my opinion, extremely passive. You could take risks in duels that actually you shouldn't been able to take, because you could just, for example, take a big risk and just jump onto the belt when you know when it spawns, and just holding up your shield gun, and the enemy like putting a combo directly in front of your face, and you take just non-damage, and you just walk away through a teleporter or around the corner. And this is just some. There happened so many actions that just shouldn't be. Yeah. Well, you can also tell, well, the shield gun is part of the game and it's just another style of play. Well, yeah, but I didn't like this style, and there were also some minor flaws to the shield gun, that you sometimes some shots went through the shield, even though you had the crosshair exactly on the enemy, but the shield didn't cover your whole model. Like your left foot couldn't be covered by the shield, so you still got damage, even though you had the shield gun on and you had your crosshair exactly on the enemy. So you should not get any damage, but you still got damage by an unlucky shot of the enemy in your foot. And if I pull the shield gun and I have the skill while moving and keeping the crosshair exactly on the enemy, I expect from the game that I get no damage. But it was too random. So, yeah, and some other factors of the game that just didn't let me enjoy the game as much as I did Unreal Tournament 99.
Okay, because as you referenced before, in Unreal Tournament 99, you were in this team Höck. That was a famous German team competing with the other teams. Obviously, as you said, MTW, I think there was an Okrana team back then. There was a whole bunch of teams. It's quite a big scene. But if you changed to SK Gaming around this time, World Cyber Games 2002, after that, SK Gaming was a big squad. And they did have funds, for example, to send people to events, etc. So the first big tournament in Unreal Tournament 2003 was at the end of 2002. It was not long after the World Cyber Games. It was CPL Winter 2002. And this is the one that people famously might remember, because it was actually in a documentary, that Fatality one. He switched over to Unreal. It was in America. It was in Dallas, where all the CPLs were. He played this tournament. You know, it was him and the other top players at the tournament in terms of the placing were actually mainly Americans. Now, I know that some European players did go. Like, I believe actually your old teammate Frag M went to this tournament, you know, and I think he actually complained and flamed the tournament, said like the PCs were terrible and they didn't use the right settings, you know, because he was kind of a spicy guy like that. So
yeah, Frag M was,
why did GitzZz not go to this tournament though?
Well, actually you said the explanation yourself. Unreal Tournament 2003 was maybe released mid-2002. 2002, yeah, and I knew I had to play the World Cyber Games, so I only practiced Unreal Tournament 99 until the day before the World Cyber Games, and I played the World Cyber Games, and just after I came home from the World Cyber Games 2002, I deinstalled, or at least I didn't play Unreal Tournament 99 anymore, but just from this day on I started playing. And I didn't know the maps, I didn't know the changes to the weapons, I just heard of the shield gun, I never tested it. And the CPL was just very short time after the World Cyber Games, so I just couldn't compete because I had no clue of the game. So I just had to practice, and I practiced it, of course, a lot. But I was far from competing because all the other players had like at least 4 or 5 months time before me playing the game. And you can have talent or time whatsoever, but if you are 4 months behind a new game, this is no sense going to a tournament.
Did you watch the tournament? Did you watch any of the replays of the games?
I think I watched a few, but only one time, and it was a long time ago. I can't really remember. I just can remember a few pictures of this tournament, and it was as you said, that Fragam said, there was something strange with the rules or with the graphics. I think, for example,
that famously Quake and Unreal Tournament players, you always want to set the graphics settings so it's very visible. I think you had to play with like full graphics settings or something weird. Like how the game is when you just install it.
Yeah, and at least that's what I think. I never want to take anything away from skill. Fatality played extremely well, but at least as far as I got to know, the players that arrived there just were informed in the tournament that they had to play with full graphics, and I think the map pool was maybe changed, but I'm not totally sure. But there were some strange things going on that some players, including Fragam, wasn't so happy about the tournament in a whole.
Okay, so obviously you did enter the game next year, because now we had another big tournament come along, which was the ESWC began in France, and it became itself a big, world championship type affair. And at this tournament, we had GitzZz come along, and so everyone's wondering, they've seen him in World Cyber Games in the old game. Now we're going to see him on a big stage in this brand new game. Did you have a similar style of play in Unreal Tournament 2003 to what you did in the original version of the game?
Well, if you view it from a distance, I would say yes. I was still a good hit scan player. I still played with a low mouse sensitivity, so I still was pretty bad with rocket launcher and flak, and I still was pretty good with sniper rifle, shock rifle, and a pulse gun, or maybe minigun. So the rough gameplay was the same, but of course you had to change due to the changes of the game, like the dodge jump, or because
did it make it harder for you to do movement with such low sense in that regard?
Not hard, or not really harder than it was in Unreal Tournament 99 for me. Okay. But it is a lot harder to move properly with a low sensitivity, and maybe it was just a little bit because you had the dodge jump, or the boost dodge jump, what it was called, when you this was some special thing when you push the jump button and the dodge at the exact time you did some higher dodge to the side where you could reach some areas you couldn't reach otherwise. And so the movement was a little bit more complex than in Unreal Tournament 99, but it's moving around in Unreal Tournament 99 with a low sensitivity was a pain in the ass, just like in Unreal Tournament 2003 and 2004. But I always preferred having good aim before being a good mover. Just the opposite of Vo. Vo's aiming extremely good, of course, too, but I'm sure you saw some replays of Vo playing Painkiller or playing Quake Champions, and it's just a pleasure to watch.
Sure.
Yeah.
So when you were at this ESWC, a big match was in the semi-finals. You played against this American player called Lotus. Now, that was actually one of his big breakout tournaments. He wasn't like some of these other players who been a big Unreal Tournament 99 player, etc. And I saw an interview where you said that you basically had never even heard of him before this ESWC campaign came around. So what was this match like? Do you remember any details of it?
Yeah, some details. And as you already know, I didn't know the players from the US, and it was right that I didn't even know him. And as I already mentioned, I didn't play different players in a different way. So I just had the huge experience of games I played versus extremely many players, but there was, due to the shield gun, there was some kind of meta play that was played in the most of the duels, and it was pretty passive. And then I played Lotus on DM Antalis, and he was just playing extremely aggressive, and as far as I remember, I was in the lead, like 10-0, and then he fragged me once, and he just ran me down, and it was like, I don't know, like 3 minutes to play, and it was 10-1, 10-2, 10-3, and I just couldn't get away as far as I used the shield gun, because I had no experience of such aggressive gameplay. I had no ability to adapt. So yeah, this was basically the problem.
Okay. So in the final, you ended up playing against a Swedish player called Zolg, who was like, funnily enough, was actually another surprise finalist to play against you, because similar story to the WCG, like he'd been playing against Fatality in the other semi-final. As we said, Fatality had won the big CPL. So most people thought, you know, kind of like that question I asked about the destrukt. Well, we're going to get it. We're going to get to see the big American player, Fatality. We're going to get to see him versus GitzZz in the final. Great. It's going to be a great match. But it didn't happen because we had this crazy upset happen.
Yeah.
What kind of a player was Zolg?
I'm sorry, but I can't really tell you much about Zolg. I just know that he had some weird kind of movement. I remember some pictures of the game he played versus I think it was Fatality, maybe, on DM Compressed, and both of them meeting at the bottom of the map where the small shield is, and Zolg somehow like dodging the walls in an extreme weird way that you really hardly couldn't hit him. So this is the picture I got of Zolg. He was like a monkey in the game, climbing the walls and avoiding the shots. But I can't tell much more about him. I also didn't talk about him too much, maybe a few sentences, but I don't really know him.
Were you disappointed that you didn't get to meet Fatality?
I wouldn't say disappointed, because of course in the first place I was just happy after the whole event that I won it. Sure. No matter who I played. But now, of course, looking back, it would have been more interesting to have played Fatality than Zolg, because of course Fatality is the big name, and he is the game switcher, and he actually was the one to beat.
Yes, the big name. Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Did since we said, like, in Unreal Tournament 99, especially once you won the first time, you were aware how good a player you are, and that, you know, you can have another chance to win the next year. Had you wondered in Unreal Tournament 2003, since it is a slightly different game, and, you know, there's all these other players, for example, that you haven't played against, did you wonder if you could still be a champion in that game before you won ESWC?
Yeah. Well, being the champion, as I said, depends on many factors like performance of the day and so on. But I, of course, thought that I had a pretty good chances, because it's not like that I played no games in between the time of World Cyber Games 2002 and Electronic Sports World Cup 2003. I instantly switched to the new Unreal Tournament, and I played many games versus many good other German and European players, and of course the results of the games were pretty good, so I knew I had good chances to finish good at the tournament.
Okay, so interestingly enough, this is actually the year that we didn't see GitzZz at the World Cyber Games, because there was a World Cyber Games in Unreal Tournament 2003 in the year 2003, but the detail I found online And this actually does line up with something that sadly I know about the history of Germany and esports, which is that in Germany, especially in the early 2000s, esports and computer games that they were called violent games. I mean, I know to us they don't seem like violent games because we used to just see it like a sport. You know, you're making points when you kill people. But to outsiders, and especially in the media and the government, etc., it was always presented as like, you know, these are violent games that, you know, make people want to kill people. This was the famous thing that they always used to imply, you know. And I believe actually around this period of time, there'd even been something like people might not be aware this happened in Germany as well as America, but like some sort of a tragic like school shooting or something terrible had happened. And so I believe that they literally just banned the game or something, right? And so there wasn't a German World Cyber Games qualifier, right?
Yeah, right. Germany has a special side on these type of games. We have a special how to tell this, part of the state that decides which games or which movies can be seen at which
a censor,
age.
Someone who decides like,
a
review board to decide that you can be 16 and play this, or 21, whatever. Yeah,
and as you already said, then there were some shootings at a school, and somehow they found out that this guy that was shooting some pupils was playing Counter-Strike. And of course the politicians took this to because someone or anything has to be the person that I right now lack the word, the English
blame.
Yeah, right. Yes. Someone has to take the blame.
Yes.
And they found out they played a violent PC game, yes. And from this day on, it all went downhill for the shooter games in Germany. So yeah, the game was banned. So actually, I don't know if I got to know the banning when it really happened, but actually I thought I would get an auto birth for World Cyber Games 2003.
Yes.
But when it really came to okay, who should fly to the World Cyber Games, I somehow missed my name, and I had Carmack. You probably know him.
Sure. Yes.
I had him.
A lot of people do. He works for ESL now. He's quite a high up guy.
Yeah. Right. And he was at my back, and we were trying to find out, or at least get a seat for me to defend my title. But at this point, all possible seats, all the number of participants that were able to fly to the World Cyber Games for Germany, all seats were taken. So I was betrayed for my defending. Yeah.
So then, okay, in this interview, as I referenced before, you seem like a pretty relaxed guy, a pretty even-keeled guy, you know. How did you react to this? Because, you know, people with different personalities, you know, they might get angry or they might get depressed, or what was your reaction knowing you just couldn't play, even though you just, you know, you were perhaps the favorite to win the tournament?
Well, I think I'm not known for being extremely emotional, so at least I didn't show my rage, but of course I was disappointed, because back then there weren't really many big tournaments, especially prize money tournaments and prestige tournaments you could take part in, and World Cyber Games was like the biggest one. So of course I was disappointed, and I tried everything to get the flight, but there was no chance. I think I also contacted the leader of the German qualifier, but he said there was just no way for me to get there. So yeah, I was disappointed. I was sad, but life goes on. I just had to deal with it and take the tournaments that were coming after that, or the games. Yeah.
And so we come back to the ESWC now, because the next year we had ESWC 2004, and in this tournament there isn't any scenario like that. GitzZz is allowed to attend. He comes to the tournament in France, he's playing, and in the semi-final you play a game. Actually, you were, I think, one of the the opponents that's like a classic opponent for you is the guy I mentioned before, the Dutchman Lauke.
Yeah.
And you played a match on Refinery that is considered like a classic game, right, in this semi-final. Can you tell me some details about this? What was this semi-final like?
Yeah, first of all, DM Refinery was a map I didn't enjoy at all, and somehow, or well, maybe put it this way, still the main factor of me playing this game was the fun factor. So if there was some part of the game that I really didn't enjoy, I really didn't do it. And when DM Refinery came out, was published, and even that it was clear that it would have been played at the Electronic Sports World Cup, and I played the maps a few times and I just didn't like it, so I just didn't play it. And I literally went to the World Cup and having played DM Refinery maybe 10 times. So this is like, you don't know the map at all. I didn't know the routes you had to go to get different weapons. So actually I was extremely bad on this map, but what I had was, of course, my pretty good aiming, and I just remember some pictures also of this map, and I remember Lauke having map control, and then I give him three sniper shots, and 2 of them being headshots, and a headshot doing 140 or 150 damage.
Okay.
So he gets a headshot, a normal shot, and a headshot again, and all his map control was gone in like 3 seconds. And yeah, this was for me like the main part of the game that I remember. And actually, I don't even remember if I won this map, but do you?
I think you probably did. I don't remember the details of it
because it was best of 3.
Single elimination. So,
yeah.
Oh, right. Yes.
Yeah,
right.
but it was best of 3, so I might even have lost this one in one ranking and ironic or something. I don't know.
Okay, could be.
Yeah.
Okay, so I had a question along these lines then, which is, as I referenced before, in the World Cyber Games 2002, a lot of people expected it would be Lauke who would play you in the final once he got to that point where he played against Shaggy and he lost this game. And then the year before, when they'd had Unreal ESWC 2003, he'd finished just outside the top 4. I think he was like 5th place, 5th to 8th, you know. Then we had this tournament. He lost to you in the semi-finals, right? Eventually, he did get his championship. He won the World Cyber Games this year, actually in 2004 later. I mean, it's a spoiler because it's going to be irrelevant to this part of the story. But as far as I know, he was one of those players where all the other players thought he was very good, but until this eventual World Cyber Games win, he never was like the champion. So for example, the year you couldn't go to the World Cyber Games, he lost in the final to the Italian player Forrest in another upset. Was he a player who maybe did he have nerve problems on stage or something? Why is someone so highly rated but so many chances to win and didn't before then? Do you have a theory on this?
I don't have a special theory on him, but I have a theory in general. You have so many players that just miss the success with so tiny edges, so little things that divides between a success and a loss. As I mentioned, actually I should have lost to Floccutus. Just this one tiny thing, this tiny little blob in his face, made me the World Cyber Games champion. So Lauke was an extremely unlucky player until World Cyber Games 2004. He could have taken the title home several times, but the circumstances weren't on his side. Or if you take the German player Fragem was an extremely good player. He also was my 2-on-2 mate. He's like the best friend of gaming of mine, and also even nowadays we are having contact. And right now he's even playing Unreal Tournament 4 again, and yeah, we have pretty much contact. And he was an extremely good player, and he was so often so unlucky. In the World Cyber Games qualifiers 2001, he was extremely sick playing the games that he actually had to play to get the qualifier done to get the flight. But he was extremely sick. Some other things happened. So he always had extremely bad luck. But to be honest, if you put Fragam's sniper skills away, because those really weren't pretty good, but the level of skill he puts in all the other details of the map, timing, movement, flag, rocket skills, shock combo skills were extremely good. But he never really, except in team deathmatch with our team, we were pretty successful. But in duel, he never reached, as far as I know,
I don't think he ever had a big placing, right?
A big placing, at least in a big tournament. He won some smaller ones, but actually he could also have been a very famous and big success duel player with the huge results and having first place somewhere. But you know, getting sick in a tournament, you've lost. Having a bad night, you've lost. Having a headache, you've lost. Having what's it called in English, like diarrhea? Yeah, you know?
Diarrhea. Yes.
Yeah, sitting on the chair, trying to play a game and almost shitting your pants. You lose because you can't concentrate. So he just had so much bad luck. Well, yeah,
Okay.
and there are so many players out there that deserve actually more prestige, but they are just not known. And yeah, there are many players out there.
So in the final of this ESWC, you play a very interesting opponent because you played a fellow German who was called Burnie.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. Even though I didn't know that much about Unreal Tournament, I know this player because even though he's called Burnie at this time, I knew him as Burning Death when he had been a Counter-Strike pro, actually. He used to play for, I think it was Deutsche Krankenhausen, like DKH, in Counter-Strike, and he'd actually been a pretty good player. Wasn't the best, but, you know, he was a good player, certainly. And bizarrely, he'd made the swap from Counter-Strike, a very, very different game, obviously, to a duel game, an Unreal. Now, admittedly, unlike maybe something like Quake, sure, Unreal does have a lot more hit scan elements, which is basically the type of aim you do in Counter-Strike. But still, it's very rare in the history of games that anyone from Counter-Strike went over to a duel game and was good there. Like, it didn't actually tend to work much the other way either. Like, actually, typically dual game players and other players didn't go into Counter-Strike either, you know. There wasn't really a lot of, like, cross-pollination, as you might say in English.
Yeah.
Did you already, since he was a German player, did you already know he was good at Unreal Tournament? Had you played him perhaps in practice before this final?
Yeah, actually we knew each other pretty well. We also did some LAN trains. And I did a whole weekend with him, I think right before the Electronic Sports World Cup. And we were playing the whole weekend. And I think... Well, it was not exactly 50-50, but I also don't remember if he won a few more maps or I did. Well, actually, it's not even that important. But he was an extremely good player. He was an extremely good aimer, and as you already mentioned, Unreal Tournament was pretty much hit scan based, and you can. Just like me, my movement wasn't pretty good, but I was hitting pretty good. So if you get in a bad situation, but you hit headshots or you have pulse gun aim of 40% or 45%, which I had in another game was a Varek, which is extremely good in Unreal Tournament. In Quake, it's like normal, but in Unreal Tournament, this kind of percentage is extremely rare. And if you aim so well, you have like 80% of the game. If you get in a bad situation and do one headshot, the situation is turned around because you eliminated the armor advantage of the enemy just with one shot.
Yes.
And it's no longer you that is in a bad situation, but the enemy. So if you have an extremely good aiming in Unreal Tournament, it's like 70-80% of the game.
Okay. So as you've referenced here, it's not like on some of the other stories where you didn't know the player you were playing or someone you just first time you've played them. You'd already played this guy in practice. He's already shown that he's a good player and you've won maps against each other. Was it a surprise that he beat you in the final of this big tournament though? Like, did you think, for example, the fact that you had so much experience and you'd been in so many finals, did you expect to win?
you can't really expect to win because you when you are in such a tournament, you are really living the moment. You are so overwhelmed by being there and playing there, so many emotions that you don't, at least I don't, sit down and think about it. So, oh yeah, I'm like the world champion there and I should win. You're just like you want to do your best. And well, of course, I knew he was an extremely good player. So of course he had pretty good chances to win. But up to that time, and you live the time just till the present. You can't look into the future. So of course I thought somehow that because of the past and my titles, I maybe had an advantage of winning, but I also played him a lot and I knew he was extremely good. So he had the same chances of winning. So yeah, it just happened. And just one thing that was funny that I remember of the final match, there's even a picture of it where I play, and I think even Burnie is shown on the picture. It shows the final match being played in the outside. Right. And at first they wanted us to play. It
was very warm or something, right?
It was very warm, and the sun was shining. And every gamer knows the least friend of a gamer is the sun having on your screen. And then we said, well, we can't play. We can't see shit. Yeah, you got the sun at your back. You're seeing nothing. And then at least we could convince the organizers to give some umbrellas. So we played under sun umbrellas. But still, of course, it was better. But you still had parts of the screen you really couldn't see. But of course, Burnie had the same problem. So this is no excuse to the result, but just to mention sometimes the circumstances you have to play in such tournaments, and with audiences being loud sometimes, or the other things I mentioned, that you hear the sounds on stage. There are so many things that you can't play properly. So many things that come towards your game. This is just incredible.
Yes. Okay. Well, unlike a lot of your other answers, where you couldn't know what would have happened if you'd have played someone 3 or 4 times, or you've maybe played them for the first time, and as you say, there's all these factors. Since you had played this guy already, did the way the final went, the match, was that in line with how it had gone when you'd practiced against him before? Was there anything unusual about this game?
The only unusual thing I remember was his weird tiny trick jump he did at the end of the final map on the DM ranking, I think it was. I was hunting him down and he was in the lead, and he was jumping down from a higher bridge, and while falling down he was already loading the hammer. And then when I dropped also down, he just did a hammer jump to the bridge again, and he was gone. And I think I also tried to switch back to the hammer and load it, but they are like 2 to 3 seconds gone. When you really can jump with the hammer, is a really bad feature, to be honest. And I already couldn't make this jump, and I was just laughing. I was sitting there. It was the final. Well, you shouldn't laugh in the final, but the situation, I was about to lose because only some seconds were to play, and he gets away with such a bastard move. I really couldn't take it.
Sure. Yeah. What was your reaction to finishing second, to losing? I mean, you'd been in all these big finals. Somehow, for whatever reason, you'd always managed to win. Maybe you were the best player. What was your reaction to losing one?
Well, of course, it's kind of new, because I actually every event I went to, I was placed first until this one. Every LAN party I took part in. So of course I was a bit sad. If you play the final and you lose, there's no one that says, "Hey, great, I'm the second." But I got Burnie as a friend, and I also liked him to be in the first place because he deserved. He, as you said, he switched from Counter-Strike. He put extremely much effort. He was like a little fatality. He played the game like a real nerd. He put in the hours. He put in the sweat, and he really deserved to be the first place. So I was disappointed. Of course, I was a bit sad. I think I didn't play a bad match, but he deserved to be placed first. So. It's okay.
Okay. So you went to the World Cyber Games that year, and you had to play Burnie again, and he beat you again, and he went to the final, and you ended up finishing 4th. You also lost to the player Chip Mask, rather. It was Mask was the team, rather. Chip from the Ukraine. Was this a rivalry you had with Burnie?
No, between Burnie and me, there actually was no rivalry because we really were good friends, at least during our gaming time. Now I have no contact with him. Like 1.5 years ago, we were playing some Overwatch together, but right now I have no contact anymore. But it was not a rival for me, not a direct rival, just like a good gaming friend that I would like to see winning. And yeah, because you just mentioned the World Cyber Games 2004, and I remember watching your Reflections movie with Vo, and Vo mentioned the release of World of Warcraft, and yeah, this was the break of my neck.
Had it had that game already gotten you? Had it lured you in?
It was insane. Yeah, it got me. Probably, I don't know, a few weeks or months after ESWC, and I got totally hooked by the game. I got so extremely hooked that I also actually didn't want to play the team deathmatch tournaments with my clan. Yeah. And of course, we had trainings every evening from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. and I was searching for new excuses that I couldn't take part, and that the player that our what's it called, like the fifth
manager or something? Oh, no. Substitute.
Yeah,
substitute, right. Yes.
Had to play all the time for me because I just didn't want to play, and also
What excuses did you use? What did you say? Like, bad neck or something? What would you say? What would you figure out to tell them?
Actually, I used just a few excuses, and then because I had and still have a good relationship with Fragem, and I was just honest with him, and I told him that I somehow got fed up with Unreal Tournament 2004. Because of what I already mentioned, the shield gun bugs and other stuff. Yes. And then World of Warcraft was released, and I was hooked by this game so extremely, and I can't play a game when I really want to play another game. I can't put effort in this game I don't want to play. And I just was being honest, and just after a few weeks, I totally stood back from team deathmatch. And even in the qualifier for the World Cyber Games 2004, I didn't even practice. I've, as far as I know, only played World of Warcraft. And at these qualifiers, I was also only placed 3rd. So actually, you can say after the Electronic Sports World Cup 2004, I wasn't really playing Unreal Tournament anymore. But I still won the qualifier, because if there is a big tournament and you are good at a game, I would be stupid to not at least try to be qualified. Sure, and I placed 3rd, so I had the opportunity to go to the World Cyber Games. But yeah, if you haven't really practiced and played the game as much as you should to participate in such a big tournament, and every other guy, of course, is practicing extremely, you just pretty much have no chance, or extremely little chances to reach the final or be the champion. So yeah, it was actually deserved to place being placed 4th at the World Cyber Games 2004.
Right, as far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, but when ESWC came the next year in 2005, you just didn't make it through the qualifier, and then that was basically it, right? You just decided, that's it, I'm done with Unreal. And was this tied in again? Were you not just playing the game much? Did you just try in similar circumstances? I'll see if I can qualify. What was it like in 2005?
I can't really remember. I even can't really remember to take part in the qualifier for the Electronic Sports World Cup 2005. If you say that I did, I really don't know.
I can't know if it's true. It's just written online, so we're trusting that.
I really can't remember myself. I just can't remember playing World of Warcraft like an insane nerd for like 2 years, and there was nothing else to do for me. I played it like almost day and night, and yeah, this was like 2 years of my life. nothing else to say. Like from mid 2004 to 2006, 2007, maybe even 3 years. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this then. What was the appeal of World of Warcraft? Because here's the thing, I've tried those sorts of games a little bit, but it's just not my sort of thing, you know. Like, one of the things I loved about esports games is the fact that what I found addictive was that you play against another person and you're trying to figure them out and you're trying to like figure out mental things about yourself. And it's actually, funnily enough, this is why it's so silly that obviously all that stuff happened politically with the idea it was a violent game, because it wasn't really. It was like doing karate or something. Sure, it's violent, but you're doing it as a sport, you know, you're trying to master yourself and this. So I'm not really the sort of person, I guess, who was caught up in the idea of these fantasy games and a big wide world and stuff. What was the appeal to you?
It probably were, again, some factors. One of the factors is that playing on a high level, every other like pro gamer or gamer that plays on a really high level can tell you it's extremely exhausting. It's stress on an extremely high level. You have to take. And then a game like World of Warcraft comes out, and I've never played a game like this before. There was like Dark Age of Camelot. My brother played this game while I was playing Unreal Tournament. I just watched it sometimes, and I said, "What a boring game." And then World of Warcraft came out, and it was just such a I actually can just say, repeat the same words as Vo, as I watched the Reflections movie of Vo, and I had the exact same feeling. It was just so a relaxed game. Yeah? No stress involved. You can explore new worlds. The story was so deep, yeah, and you could play different characters like a night elf, rogue, and backstabbing while being in shadows and stuff. And yeah, it was just so great exploring this whole world of World of Warcraft, the continents, the single islands, and it was just great. It just took me, and it took almost 3 years to get out of the fangs. Yeah.
Okay. So one of the interesting things is, first of all, you alluded there that you watched the interview I did with Vo, and you've already referenced his movement before. And when I did my little bit of research, admittedly, there's not that much stuff on the internet anymore, because funnily enough, a lot of the websites that we used to use don't exist anymore. They've, so long ago, they're not even on the website anymore. No, I guess whoever it was stopped paying the bill to keep it up, So one interesting detail I found, though, is, like I said, I knew that you did post on ES Reality, like a lot of us did back then. So I went back and I found the account GitzZz, and I went back and I looked, and there's even an old comment when one of Vo's famous frag movies from CPMA came out, which was famous because, it was like very high level action, but also it was very fast paced, as that game was. Yeah. And you're even there making a comment where you sort of like, you loved this movie. You were like, what a great movie, one of the best, Yeah. Even though you didn't play Quake, I know you played it a little bit. Were you a fan of Vo? Were you a fan of Quake play in general?
I would say I've always enjoyed watching Quake duels. I also, for example, watched at the World Cyber Games 2001 when I didn't have to play myself. I watched as much Quake games as I could. I sat at the stage and watched the game of Unkind versus some other guy, some Achilles, some Spanish guy or something.
Yes. Oh, this is 2002 actually, but yes, that was the final. Yes.
Okay. So I really, I've always been enjoying watching Quake duels, and yeah, I'm a small fan of Cooler back then, and even nowadays is his comeback in Quake Champions. I'm following the games and the tournaments a bit, not too much, but a bit, and I just really enjoy this gameplay and watching this movement. I tried Quake, but the style of movement is just not my style. Yeah. I don't want to play it. I don't enjoy playing it myself, but I like watching it.
Okay.
And back then, CFC 04 or nowadays Rafa, or I watched the QuakeCon final 2016, which was Rafa versus Evil, I think.
Oh yes, in Quake Live. Yes, you're right. It was, yes.
I watched this game on this overtime map. They had like, I don't know, 10 minutes overtime.
Yes.
And I didn't know the outcome of the match beforehand.
Yeah.
And
it's a very exciting match, right?
Yeah, and I literally was sitting on my chair. I had sweaty hands, and my heart went like insane. And I was just watching it. Oh no, another overtime, and the skill they have shown was so extremely high that it was such a pleasure to watch such a game. And yeah, so Quake for me to watch, and also Quake Champions actually. I also enjoy to watch. I also watched every or almost every game of the QuakeCon 2017, Quake Champions, and I saw this final Vo and Claws and the other games and Cooler performing, and it was great. It's really great. Yeah, it's fun to watch, and it's really great to have a platform like Twitch nowadays, because back then there just was nothing like that. You couldn't like watch such a live event. The World Cyber Games were like streamed, I think, on the World Cyber Games page.
Yes.
But the stream was extremely bad. My parents tried to watch it, but it was
very
like,
low bit rate, and
it was
not good.
Extremely bad picture, and you had like a picture every 10 seconds. So the conditions back then were so bad, and nowadays we have Twitch, we have YouTube with YouTube channels of like every pro player posting his games, and nowadays the circumstances of or the conditions of esports are so much better compared to back then. Especially because, or what comes to my mind right now, the drop of FPS arena esports after Painkiller was such a shame, you can say. Actually, after Painkiller, there was nothing really to play. Even Quake was pretty dead after QuakeCon once a year, but actually, I thought that Painkiller coming up, and with the World Tour, I thought this was the breakthrough of FPS arena esports, that this is the start of it becoming really mainstream and more tournaments coming up. But actually it was the exact opposite. It was like the end.
Sadly.
Yeah, and this was just sad. So yeah, this just came to my mind when I mentioned Painkiller. Okay. Yeah.
Because obviously I was going to ask, why didn't you play Quake? But you've answered me there. It wasn't your style. You didn't like the movement, etc. Because like this is a topic I wanted to ask you about. Okay, so sadly, back in these early days we're talking about, players were very elitist. That's what we would say in English, right? They thought their game was the best. And famously, esports wasn't a big thing like it is now with many different games. And so actually, funnily enough, except for people watching Quake, like I know a lot of the Counter-Strike players also like to watch Quake as well. Except for that way round, usually people didn't watch other games. They tended to just follow their game, and then they didn't know much about the other scenes. And most famously, obviously Quake players were the most elite players in this, elitist rather. Like they all thought that Unreal Tournament fucking sucked, and it was a shit version of Quake, and so they just didn't really care at all, right? I'm impressed that you were different in this sense, that you didn't just think Unreal Tournament was better than Quake and ignore it. You enjoyed to watch it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I did, and I of course, Quake is just a different game, but in some aspects, it was a very balanced game, much more balanced than Unreal Tournament was. In Unreal Tournament, you had some weapons that did extreme damage. When you got control in Quake Live or Quake 3, it was when you were timing well. It was much harder for the underdog to get control back or to kill the enemy. In Unreal Tournament, it's much easier, or there's also more luck involved because you had extremely strong spam weapons. In Unreal Tournament 99, it was even extremer than in Unreal Tournament 2003 and 2004. You had a 6-pack of rockets, one doing 100, if I remember correctly. So, and they went in a spread, so you could actually cover like your whole screen in rockets. These rockets were moving slow, so you didn't hit very often. But when you hit, you could be like sure that the enemy is dead, and no matter what he had, like 150 armor and 199 health, doesn't matter because you did like, well, not every rocket hits 100%, but you did at least like 400 damage when you were close. And of course, such weapons weren't in Quake. You had the railgun doing 100 damage or 90 or something, and the rocket doing 100, but no weapon like the goo doing like 300, the 6-pack rockets doing like 400 or something. Yes. And the shock combo, when you stand near to the core of the explosion, you also do like, I don't know, almost 200 damage. So the damage that you were able to deal to your opponent in Unreal Tournament, in the Unreal Tournament series, if you were lucky or if you did predict very well, you could take the advantage of the enemy controlling the map with one shot. And this just wasn't possible in Quake. You had to put more effort in to get control back, like peek the edge, giving a rail, putting a trap, putting a rocket to the feet, and then air rocket and a rail or something. It was a little bit harder to get map control back, but it was just two different type of games. As I already heard in the reflections with wishes you did, I have about the same opinion as he. I will just tell it right now, that the infight, the close fight of Unreal Tournament is much more complex than in Quake, because in Quake you really just can strafe, and the strafe is pretty slow, and the models are pretty big. Yes. So you almost, when you're about close, you almost can't miss your opponent. In Unreal Tournament, there are infights that you almost step on the foot of your opponent, and when the enemy moves good, you sometimes can't hit him really, because the dodge is fast. The models are much smaller than in Quake. Sure. So the infight in Unreal Tournament, in my opinion, was tell it more skill, or I don't know, at least harder to master the movement, to evade the enemy, but also harder to hit the enemy than in Quake. But in Quake it was more fun to watch, and the movement of Quake through big maps was just better because of the strafe jumping, and it was just faster. And so Unreal Tournament, as I mentioned in the beginning of the interview, on DM Deck 16 in Unreal Tournament, is, when you just look at the movement, is really a pain to watch, because you can only walk, dodge. Back then, now you in Unreal Tournament 4, which is actually, I think, the best Unreal Tournament that was released of all series. Now you have some more features. You can dodge. You can dodge and slide at the wall after the dodge. You can dodge and do like a crouch slide. Okay. You can also do multiple dodges from walls. So if you you have a narrow path and you dodge to the one wall, you can slide at this wall, then dodge away from this wall, slide at the next wall, and like crouch slide under an obstacle. And this movement of Unreal Tournament 4, combined with good maps, in my opinion, like DM Lea, as I mentioned, is extremely fun to watch, to play, and extremely strategic, because the skill ceiling of movement is possibly so much higher in Unreal Tournament 4 than it was in any other series of Unreal Tournament. But as it is, Unreal Tournament 4 has no community at all. It has like 100 players and no tournaments. Of course, it's in pre-alpha state right now, but it's in pre-alpha since, I don't know, 2 years. And only God knows if it will ever come out of pre-alpha. But I really want to pray, and I want to tell Epic Games to, of course, they have other projects, you know, like Fortnite and Paragon, but please finish Unreal Tournament 4 for me and do some tournaments. Maybe I'll come back. Yeah.
Okay. So, okay, funnily enough, when I referred early on in the interview and I said, you know, in the early days, Unreal had this scene and it had ESWC and it had the World Cyber Games. But unlike Quake, which, you know, had its comeback with Quake Live and Quake Champions, even though there were Unreal games, the esports side died out in terms of being one of the big esports games. You know, it was just sort of semi-pro level tournaments. And actually, until I went back and did this research, and you alluded to the fact you also were in mouse sports, I didn't even know that you kept playing. I thought you actually had just retired after Unreal Tournament 2004, and that was it. You were gone. So I didn't know that you'd done a comeback in Unreal 3, and then now Unreal 4 you're playing. Since there isn't a big esports side, are you still were you playing the game seriously in these years or just for fun?
No. Actually, I've stopped playing seriously in 2004. Then I switched to World of Warcraft, playing it until 2007, and I already and I also had to do my, I don't know the English word, I think it's apprenticeship, like 3 years of learning for a job that you can do this job.
Yes.
And I had to do this from 2004 to 2007. And then Unreal Tournament 3 came out, and I actually was motivated to play, and I started having some LAN trains with Fragem again, and we had fun, and the skill rise. And yeah, then I when the big tournament, the first and only big tournament that there was for Unreal Tournament 3, I even can't remember the name, but it was like with, I don't know, 10,000 euros or pounds or something. I also had to start the real work in real life, and I started working full time. And I remember I also had to do shifts. So I sometimes even came home late. And then there was the qualifier for this event, and I remember exactly I should have played, I think, even a group match, and it was set in the evenings, and somehow it I think there was no ability to postpone it or to set another time, and I was working full time and in shift, so I had no much options. So somehow this game had to be played, and actually I was pretty good in Unreal Tournament 3 to that time, but I had a day full of work. I came home, or I had to work until 8 p.m. and the game was set to 8:30 p.m. So I came home from work from an extremely hard day, and when you begin working in a job, it was extreme. So actually, I just worked and slept and ate a bit, and then I worked and slept and played a little bit of Unreal Tournament. At least I played this game. I had no warm up because I came home and instantly had to switch on my PC. Just that I didn't forget to put on my headphones that I had sound. It was a complete mess. I don't even remember who I played. Okay. Never heard of him. I don't even think it was a good player. I didn't perform anything, and this was the sign for me that also with the beginning of my start of the work in real life, I thought, okay, this is no sense. You have the real life now. You have to work. You have to get some money. You have to focus on your real life. And so I just quit after this small time of a few months of playing Unreal Tournament 3.
Okay.
This is it.
When as you said, you went off to World of Warcraft, and you wanted to play this game for fun, and you were done with the other game that you would play a little bit. Obviously, at the time, no one could have known that Unreal as an esport was kind of going to die out or become irrelevant, just a year or two later. Knowing what you know now, do you regret quitting so soon? I mean, you basically could have just waited another year and then quit the game, and you would have been able to play a few more tournaments. Concerning
Unreal Tournament 3?
No, back in when you went to World of Warcraft.
World of Warcraft. I actually was playing PvP in World of Warcraft, but I only enjoyed the very beginning of PvP in Warcraft. I don't know. You probably don't know this in
it was 3v3, right?
Yeah, but this was already when the Battlegrounds came out.
Oh, they made the servers where you could go and just play against people, yes.
Yeah, and I enjoyed much more the PvP in the open world. The battles between South Shore and Terrence Mill. You probably don't know it, but it were like two close cities. Sure. And I really enjoyed it, like PvPing there. And I was top 3 at that time at the server. There were some stats you could look up, and I was nerding the game pretty much. But as soon as the Battlegrounds came out and the PvP in the like you can play it for real, like 3 versus 3 and so on, I didn't really play this. I just played open PvP and the PvE versus the computer environment.
Okay. Right. People can't see it in the shot right now because to put the overlay that I put on the interview, I've cropped your camera so we just see you. But I'm actually just showing it now, just the top part of the camera, because people can see as now you have your checks from these big tournaments behind you, in the room that you play in now, So it's not like you're one of these players. Like, listen, there were some people back then who just were good at the game. They didn't really care about the esports side, So some of them, it's a chapter in history, but they don't think about it now. It was just something they did when they were young. As people might tell from this interview and from some of the things you've said, the fact you're still playing Unreal now, you asked Epic, you did a nice plea there to Epic to make some tournaments for the game. You look back pretty fondly on your career, right? It was satisfying.
Extremely, yeah. I of course had to do huge sacrifices in my youth for the achievements I did, but I enjoyed somehow I enjoyed the sacrifices. When I also was in school back then, and most of my classmates were going out in the evening to a bar or to a disco drinking and stuff, and I just didn't want to. I was a well, you can say like a typical nerd. I just didn't feel fun in going. Well, I went sometimes out like a party once a month, but my classmates went like 3 times a week and drinking alcohol, and this just was no fun for me. At least for most of the time, I had a short break of alcohol too, but not too much. And of course, my youth was totally different to the standard youth of all the other guys I had in school or of my other friends, of my real life friends. But I would never change it. I'm well. It's a mixture of pride, of happiness, of what I achieved, of the situations I was able to go through with my teammates, with the tournaments. We had so much fun and so much emotions. I would never change it to a normal youth with partying and drinking alcohol. So yeah, what you see behind me is my gaming corner of this room, and I'm proud of it.
Okay.
Yeah,
At the end, yes. Sorry.
Yeah, I thought you wanted to see it because I think there's only a part of the visible right now, but we can also do it at the end. Or
Okay,
not
yeah.
if you don't want.
Well, you can show me now if you want.
Yeah,
What have you got?
Okay, just let me try. These are the cheques. And here are some trophies.
Trophies, yes, yeah.
And here, well, it's pretty small, but there are like, I don't know, like 15 medals of all these tournaments. Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. You got a little tribute there.
Yeah, it's nice.
Okay. Right, at the end of this interview, do you have either a final message to leave people with, or is there someone you'd like to shout out or thank?
I want to send out greetings to all the players I met, to the ones I don't have contact to anymore, but also to the ones I have contact, like Fragem right now, or actually I want to meet Cloud, and he's living not far from here, like 30 kilometers, but nonetheless we didn't meet each other yet the past years. Greetings to Cloud, to all my other past clan mates, and yeah, I want to thank Epic Games, of course, for doing such epic games, and hopefully bringing Unreal Tournament 4 to a good end, and maybe even better establish a little esport scene, in which way I can imagine. But it's a really good game with really minor flaws that could be a really good game to play in an esports way. And yeah, of course, I want to thank the whole community of all games, of what esport has become. With Twitch, so many streamers you can watch from home, just setting up your PC and watching games of high level or of fun gamers you can watch. It has become so I lack the right word, so excellent, so good, the whole gaming thing, esports and gaming in a whole, with media giving it more attention. Even football clubs in Germany starting to hire gaming clans or gaming esport players. I really want to see this profession grow, and I'd love to watch it getting bigger and being at the real Olympics. Maybe I would love to see that.
Danke.
That's it. Bitteschön.
Hey guys, this is Patrick Carnes-Sedermoon. You might know me as the guy with the most IM medals in the world, or something like that. I'm also the CGO of Fnatic, and you're watching Duncan 4 in Shield's YouTube channel. Yeah, pleasure being here.